Hi, Neil.
What's up, man? I don't think we're supposed to talk before the meeting.
Good morning. My name is Rod Arroyo with Giffords Webster. I am the City of Farmington Hills Planning Consultant. My colleague Joe Tangari and I, as well as members of City Administration, are on this Zoom session as well. This program is being recorded and will be available online. In addition, City Administration will be preparing a summary report that will be provided to City Council as part of this information gathering. Starting off with a little bit of history, in August 2021, the Farmington Hills City Council finalized a cannabis industry information gathering and public outreach plan. City Council has carefully monitored and continued to educate itself on changes in regulations in the cannabis industry at the state level, as well as the experiences of other municipalities that have decided to allow commercial production and sales of cannabis at the local level. The city has not opted to allow commercial, medical, or recreational cannabis facilities under the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act of 2016. They did not opt in, or the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act of 2018. They opted out. Most recently, members of the City Council have expressed a desire to gather additional information from representatives of the cannabis industry regarding the various types of commercial cannabis facilities that are allowed in Michigan, and to gain an initial level of public input on whether to allow such facilities in the city of Farmington Hills. The following are the general steps for undertaking these efforts. One, the cannabis industry information gathering sessions are underway. There's 3 sessions. This is the last of the 3. We had 2 yesterday. Session 1 was growers and processors. Session 2 was retailers, testing facilities, and secure transporters. And then session 3 today includes micro businesses, designated consumption establishments, and temporary event organizers. Following this, there will also be information gathering from other municipalities as the city of Farmington Hills looks to learn from what other communities have experienced. And then finally, there'll be a public outreach component where the public will have an opportunity to weigh in on this particular subject. So today's session, we have industry representatives that have volunteered. First of all, I want to thank you on behalf of the city of Farmington Hills volunteering your time to share information in this information gathering process. I do want to go over a few ground rules for this session. First of all of the panelists are muted. Please remain muted until the question and answer portion. Also, please leave your cameras on during the session. The city has prepared a series of questions that were provided to you in advance of today's meeting. I'll be asking each one of those in sequence and then allow the participants to respond. Please raise your hand in the webinar controls if you'd like to answer the question. If you're having issues with the webinar control, if you're using a PC computer, Alt-Y on your keyboard will raise your hand and also lower the hand. And if you have a Mac, the Option Y does the same thing. It raises the hand and lowers the hand. During the webinar, members of the public and others watching will be able to submit questions in the Q&A section. Also, they can submit with an email address. That email address is fhclerk@fhgov.com. Once again, that's fhclerk@fhgov.com. If we have time, we will ask additional questions at the end of the session if we get them through the Q&A or through the email process. City Council will receive all of the information, including the questions and the answers. Our goal is to get through this session in a maximum time of 1.5 hours. If you do have supplemental information that you would like to submit to the city, you may do so using the email address I just provided. As long as that information is received by 4:30 p.m. this Friday, March 18th. Anything that comes in after 4:30 on Friday will not be included in the report that goes to City Council. So please limit your answers to the questions that are being asked. You will have 3 minutes to respond to each question. In order to use our limited time, if someone's already given the same answer, just acknowledge that you agree with the answer. Just trying to be as efficient as possible. In the event that you venture away from the topic, I'll give you a friendly reminder to kind of stay on topic here as we go through this. So let's start off by having the panelists introduce themselves. I'm going to start off here. Looks like we have Neil Vora. Neil, do you want to introduce yourselves? Give us like a 30-second introduction.
Sure. My name is Neil. I'm an attorney that works all over Michigan with smaller level growers and processors. A lot of my clients are looking to transition into the micro business, and I actually represent one of the 4 currently operating micro businesses in the state of Michigan. I also do event work with temporary events. I'm working with the city of Lansing to put on a number of events this summer. And some of my clients are looking into getting into the consumption lounge establishment, but I'm sure that when we get to it, we will talk about some of the issues that are keeping them from applying. So,
okay, great, thank you. All right, Carrie Arold, is that how you say your name?
Yes, sir. Arold, A-R-O-L-D. It's like Harold without the H.
Okay, great.
My name is Carrie Arold. I own and operate the most successful cannabis concentrate business in the state. We're in over 200 stores right now. I've been a patient since the inception of MMMP back in 2009. Still currently a caregiver with that program. During that time, I was able to create a brand and a following where I've been able to leverage that and license that to a large corporation here in the state that holds my intellectual property, my brand, my genetics, as well as my standard operating procedures, and is able to distribute my product and genetics across the state. Currently, I am pursuing a micro business in the city of Bay City. We're about to close on our building and move forward with all that. So just currently navigating the application process and the requirements that come along with it. However, I feel that the micro business was written and designed for caregivers like myself to be able to get into the market without having to have millions of dollars and get a large license that costs a lot of money and regulatory assessments and things like that. So that's it. Great to meet you guys. I look forward to this session.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start with the questions here. So the first question is, the city of Farmington Hills is collecting information from industry representatives in order to learn more about cannabis micro businesses, designated consumption establishments, and temporary events. Are there specific examples that you can provide where permitting these uses has led to an increase in economic development in an area? And can you identify the communities or locations where that occurred? Anyone want to answer that and look for a hand on that? All right, Carrie, start with you.
So currently, like I said, we're navigating the process with the city of Bay City. The building that we are going to be operated in is located downtown. So we will be doing a lot of renovation to the outside of the building. It is an old historic building in the historic part of downtown. I do foresee upgrading the facade, and the history of the building, is going to draw added economic resources to the surrounding community. Also, with a micro business, you can only provide what you cultivate on site. So you're not allowed to bring in product from outside sources. So you can tailor your business operations around that, such as there's a lot of surrounding businesses. And so we can choose to open our doors at, let's say, 6 o'clock at night when there is more traffic. So that way the customers that are coming to my store can go to the surrounding establishments, bars, restaurants, things like that, and share their economics with them, and able to contribute and things like that. So I'm hoping that having that one small little factor with having our business hours, because a lot of the businesses in the area are bars and restaurants that are more or less open in the evening time around there. So we are going to do whatever we can to work with the surrounding businesses, so that way we can benefit them in a positive direction, and just be open, transparent, and always have our door open and be able to communicate with them to help them succeed, help us succeed, and together everyone achieves more. So that's kind of going to be our model when opening our doors here, hopefully within the fall.
Okay, thank you very much. Neil, Laura, did you have a response?
Yeah, just that I work with one of the currently state licensed operators in Michigan for a micro business. They are out of Ann Arbor. They've done a lot to help out their community, and really, when you look at the other license types that you mentioned in the previous sessions, and this piggybacks off of what Carrie was saying, really it's the micro business that license that usually goes to the smaller growers that are from that city. And so they're more dedicated to that city, to improving that city, whereas a corporation, how it works, they come in, they raise prices, and while it may seem like a good short-term solution, they have the money to pay their rent for 3 years. You can see in other states what the gentrification problem was caused to smaller cannabis business. It actually takes them out of the market. So if you want long-term players that are going to give back to your community and directly impact your community, the micro business license type is one of the best ways to go about it.
Great, thank you very much. All right, I'm going to go on to our next question. Uses that permit on-site consumption, such as designated consumption establishments of cannabis, are just making their way to the state of Michigan. Public concerns range from impaired driving to and from these facilities to fear of certain external effects, such as crowds gathering outside, negative impacts on property values for nearby properties, crime, odor. What measures have been taken to address these concerns in other communities, and can you provide locations? And then can you give examples of other communities and specific actions or remedies that were put into place to address concerns or specific incidents that may have occurred? And we'll start with Neil Bora on this.
So currently there's only a few designated consumption allowed establishments, even in the state. People are finding it to be a hurdle to monetize that license. And the reason why I'm saying that is because they don't allow for sale of food or any beverages there. So to keep someone there and to make them pay to be able to consume cannabis there, like there needs to be something that they pay for. Otherwise, how are you going to pay for this license? How are you going to pay for your rent? And so that's the obstacle that my clients are running into. And the state has really limited that with not allowing food sales, not allowing drink sales. On top of that, the state requires state-of-the-art ventilation system. They require areas that are smoke free for the employees of the building, which is all good. But there needs to be a model where you can monetize this, and I don't think that anyone has really figured that out, except there's a couple operating currently in Kalamazoo. And as far as the public concern over crowds and drunk driving, I mean, there really isn't that outrage when a sports bar comes into town. You don't think, oh, there's going to be a bunch of people drunk driving there. It's just another sports bar opening up. So I think that in time these types of establishments will become more normal, but we're sort of all the cities are at the edge of the pool, and they're waiting for someone to jump in first and see how they did it and be like, okay, I don't want to do it like that. So
okay, thank you. Excellent. Appreciate that. Any other response to that one? Go ahead, Carrie.
I don't really have much experience with the consumption lounge here in the state of Michigan. However, I've been to a couple out in the state of California. The consumption basically room was more or less ancillary to the retail outlet. So if a customer came into the retail outlet and purchased medicine, they then had the option if they wanted to go through this door and consume it on site. Again, it wasn't monetized or anything like that. They weren't able to monetize anything within the smoking room. However, it was more or less ancillary to a customer's experience coming to the retail establishment and being able to gather, similar to like a Starbucks, where you see customers go to Starbucks. Some people won't even buy a Starbucks. They'll just go there to use the free Wi-Fi and things like that. So that's kind of how I compared it. Was like, you just have a gathering place. A lot of business meetings I saw would be taking place and things like that. And that's currently the model that the state is pursuing, is a non-monetized consumption establishment. But yes, as Neil, piggybacking off of what Neil was saying, is that, the state-of-the-art air filtration and things like that, and designated rooms that are non-smoking all cost a lot of money. So, I mean, if you're going to invest, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 into this consumption establishment, you're not looking at any ROI on any of that. It's more or less a perk that you can market to customers, saying, after you purchase, if you choose to, you can consume here, because a lot of consumers do not know if they're going to like it or not. It's like getting a new micro beer. They may not like the new IPA. They may rather have a lager. So being able to test that on site before they go home, they may want to change their mind, so on and so forth. So those are the things that that's the information that I kind of gathered when I was touring those sites out in California.
All right, thank you very much. Neil, did you have another response?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump back in there. Carrie made me think of something else. Also, the state has requirements in their rules that require that the staff be trained on how to tell if a person is overconsumed or something like that. And it's similar to a bar, right? You have the Dram Shop Act, where the bartender can be held liable if they overserve a patron. And the same type of thing is going to work here. If a patient or a person is clearly intoxicated or whatever, and they allow them to overindulge, then they can be held liable. So, there's a lot of, I understand, I guess, the concern from the community, but the state has put regulations in place there to protect themselves. So,
thank you. All right, our next question deals with temporary events, which generally are the 1 to 7 day events of a temporary nature. Many of the same issues that we just talked about may be raised by those who have concerns about these types of events. Can you address any specific temporary events you've been involved with, and how concerns related to security, noise, traffic, or odor have been addressed there? Any responses to that? Yes, Neil.
Yeah, so I've attended a number of licensed events now. They're becoming more and more popular now that cities are now have the permitting processes to allow for these events. I know that you have to apply for them at least 90 days in advance, which requires a lot of planning. But whereas these events were somewhat underground before and unregulated, now they're allowed to be above ground and totally regulated with security. Every vendor has their own POS terminal. All transactions go through the POS, which goes directly to Laura. So all of these things, there are mechanisms in place. You just have to, as a city, follow the permitting processes that a Lansing or a Benton Harbor has already put in place.
Okay, thank you. Carrie, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I've been to events here, such as High Times Cups in the past that were located more or less in Clio Township. And yeah, they just have a lot of security, a large event like that, wanted to make sure that there was parking. And, they set curfew regulations so that way they couldn't go too late, with music, decibel levels, things of that nature. Again, piggybacking off of what Neil said, events that I have gone to out in Colorado as well as California, each booth vendor has their own POS terminal, things like that. And so it's more or less a farmer's market, I would kind of compare it to. And depending upon the person's, I would say, following and things like that, brand presence and things like that, that's what you would want to establish before permitting the license. Because if someone has, with this day of social media, some of these people have millions of followers or tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers. So if that research can be done prior to permitting that event license, to understand the amount of people that could be coming and seeing if the space that the applicant has chosen has adequate parking and security to handle the following and things like that. So it's more or less just doing the due diligence and things like that of the applicant. But they are definitely becoming more and more prevalent, and a lot of people really like to participate in the community. And those are events that everybody loves to attend.
We have a question that's come through here regarding the note on the point of sale, the POS, and the question regarding credit card transactions. We're hearing more and more that there's increase in credit card transactions related to cannabis sales. Can you elaborate a little bit on how that's working and the type of institutions you're working with to do that? Go ahead, Neil.
Sure. Yeah, I saw that question come through. I wasn't sure whether I should answer it live or so. The issue of taking credit cards really is dependent on the retailer having a bank that they do business with in Michigan that allows them to work with cannabis businesses. And so the way that works, and I'm sure you all know, most banks are all banks are federally insured. And
right.
So that limits them on their policy because they don't want to deal in something that's federally illegal. However, there are a number of state and local banks and credit unions that have said, we see the writing on the wall and it's going to be our choice to deal with these cannabis institutions. And so for those people, they allow credit card transactions. I know one of the partners in my law firm works with Pure Options in Lansing, and they recently just allowed for credit card sales. But the reason that they're allowed to do that is because that their bank allows for them to take credit card sales. So it's not going to be every POS can take credit card sales. It's determined whether if that retailer has a relationship with a banking institution that allows them to take credit card sales. So, and then another, just real quickly on, I think that you had addressed smells and things like that about, temporary events. Most of these events are held at parks and things like that. So, the smell is never really an issue. I don't see many licensed events that are allowed to take place in, hotels or things like that, just namely because the hotel doesn't want, the lingering effects of the use and the party and things like that. So most of these things take place outside. And like what Carrie said, there needs to be an effort on the part of the event organizer, really to facilitate parking, to facilitate security, because those are the main concerns. You want to have, first aid stations for people that have overindulged in the heat and stuff like that. So those are the types of things that are more concerns than smell or something like that.
Okay. Yes, Carrie, go ahead. Thank you.
I was born here in Farmington Hills. I just turned 40 years old March 12th. I've lived here my entire life. Graduated Farmington Hills Terrace, and I could think of a spot to hold an event than the Farmington Hills Harrison or the new community center. Adequate parking, tons and tons of space, highway to the south. Not much residential around the area and things like that. So if you could just picture, an event being taken place on those grounds, there's tons and tons of parking. There's lots of outdoor space, lots of space for the vendors to put up their booths and things like that. So if you could just picture, something like that, food trucks in the parking lot possibility, that would be in my idea versus somewhere like Heritage Park. I don't think you'd want to have Heritage Park have a cannabis event there or anything like that. So just an idea of, so that way you can get something in your mind a little bit of where somewhere in the city of Farmington Hills could something like an event be held.
Okay, yeah, and we're kind of getting into the next question anyway, so let's keep rolling with that. So the site-related factors that you consider when looking for a new location, and obviously we're talking about several different types of facilities here. So Neil, you had your hand up. Do you want to respond to that because we go into this next question?
And just real quickly, going back to the benefits that you don't think of when you hold a temporary event like this, and Carrie brought it up with the food trucks, oftentimes it's the local vendors, local food trucks that end up getting these contracts for the temporary events. So it impacts your economy greatly. There's a ton of people coming in for gas, stopping for food afterwards, just like any concert. So those are the other benefits. Going back to your other question about, and sorry, could you repeat it real quick? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. The primary site-related factors that you're considering when looking for a new location?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an issue with a lot of people currently looking for properties, and I'm sure Carrie is included. But when a city restricts zoning to a certain area of town, it always happens. You can look at it in every other city that restricts their zoning. The area of town that allows for it is often, dilapidated uses. They try to put them in, industrial zones, but usually those zones are owned by one person who gets the word that, or a group of people that gets the words that now that the property that they own is worth double, they end up, raising the prices, and these cannabis businesses are stuck in places with, places that they don't necessarily want to operate, that don't have the best house or units, and they're paying an exorbitant amount of rent. And so I guess the better solution is cities like Bay City, cities like Kalamazoo that allow for open zoning and allow for any place that meets their zoning, as long as you aren't within X amount of schools, churches, whatever, to operate. Otherwise, you're always going to run into the issue where the property costs are just too high for people to enter your market. And that's my experience.
Okay, Carrie, you got a response?
So in looking into a location, such as for a micro business, because you are capped at 150 plants, which does not require that much square footage. So a lot of the places that these cities are zoning for are only have buildings 10, 15, 20,000 square feet. And it just completely, takes them right out of it. A micro business total with the retail side, the processing side, and the grow side all under one roof, maximum would be 6,000 square feet. You could get it done with 3,000 square feet, 4,000 square feet. So it needs to be zoned in a more light industrial / retail area. The building that we got for Bay City, like I said, is downtown. It is an old restaurant. Which provides a ton of space, a lot of the infrastructure, 800 amps of power. It's not that expensive, but it's actually zoned right downtown in the retail area. For the city of Farmington Hills, I know we have large industrial parks over on Indoplex and around Halstead and Haggerty and things like that. That's not an area where a micro business, because at the end of the day, the micro business is more retail than a grow. The grow for a micro business could take up maybe 1,000 to 1,500 square feet. And so you really have to think about where you're going to zone it, like places along 8 Mile, on the north side of 8 Mile, some of those old auto mechanic spots where you can, in the back with the high bays, you can have your grow, you can delineate your processing, then you can throw up a firewall and have your retail up front that is maybe only 500 to 1,000 square feet. Certain light industrial buildings that are along 9 Mile between like Middle Belt and Merriman there. I know there's some buildings there, but there really isn't much elsewhere in the city of Farmington Hills that it really could be zoned that is beneficial to the applicant, because they are going to be solely relying upon, those days when they're open, because let's say they sell out, let's say they cultivate X and they sell out that product within 3 days. Well, if there's other dispensary establishments that are open, 7 days a week, all the time, taking their customers, and the micro business, because they're in a really great retail spot, like 13 Mile in Orchard Lake or something like that, or 14 Mile in Orchard Lake, an amazing retail spot. They're going to get a lot of customers. And then there's this micro business that, well, because they grow and process, we're going to put them over on Indoplex Drive, and they're going to get no money. That's going to be a failed business. So these micro businesses do need to be zoned in a retail park area in order for them to succeed, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Neil, you got a response?
Yeah, so just adding to what he said, these micro businesses, and I think that you sort of get in the group hopefully gets that the micro businesses were sort of made for the smaller entry level grower to enter the market. It's not a play for the big players, and the state tries to ensure that by limiting the micro business to one per entity or whatever. They don't allow franchising of these micro businesses. But however, these micro businesses go through the same state regulations that a large grower or a large processor would. They have to buy the same safety equipment. They have to buy the same, they have to go through the same testing and all that. So there needs to be a way that the city helps facilitate the micro businesses. Otherwise, if you leave them to their own devices, it's going to be, the big dogs eat the little dogs. So if you really want to help foster, new businesses that are going to give back directly to your community and be members of your community, there needs to be not just we let everyone, pick out zoning. There needs to be a special, maybe a micro business zone where you allow for micro businesses only to operate or something like that.
Yeah, and I have a follow-up question, Carrie, since you have your hand up. You mentioned about the challenge of a micro business because it's so small you could run out of product. What would be the turnaround time to have the next availability of product that you would be able to offer if in a typical business operation of a micro business?
2 months. So basically our business plan is, for the city of Bay City is 6 times a year we'll be open because it takes 2 months to produce a crop. Okay, well, if I don't have any material to process or any material to retail, then the processing and retail side are going to stay closed. We're only going to grow it. Then once that grow is done and harvested, well, now we can reset that, and now we can start processing the material that we just harvested. Once we're done processing, i.e. packaging it more or less, well, now we can move over to the retail side. And the hope is that you sell out. So it's going to be like a drop or a pop-up shop, almost like an event. Because if you only have inventory 6 times a year, and if you have a following, the goal is to hopefully sell out within 1 day, 5 days. And so it would be an every 2 month type of thing. Now you can orient your garden so that way you're harvesting more often. You can set it up to where you're harvesting every month or every few weeks and things like that. But it all depends on how you would like to have your business operate. I personally feel like a pop-up shop where each time you open, you can do something special, a new food truck, a new sweatshirt, a new hat, a new strain to draw up, customers and things like that, to make it more of quote unquote like an event or a special pop-up shop, or a new piece of clothing being dropped, a new pair of shoes being dropped and things like that. A location that I could think of for a micro business that would kind of fit would be, I know ACO operates there on Orchard Lake, just north of 13 Mile. But that would be like a suitable location. It has high ceilings. It's around 5,000 square feet. It's in a retail area, things like that. So yeah, that would just, those are the kind of things and buildings that I look for if I'm going to be doing a micro business. Good foot traffic, things like that, because that's what ultimately is going to determine your success or not.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, I'm going to move on to the next question. Can you give examples of the types of temporary events that you are aware of in other communities, including those communities, and what types of events you think would be most successful in Farmington Hills and why? I know you've talked a little bit about that, but maybe we can expand upon that. Let's go with Neil. We'll get Neil, and then I'll get to you in a minute.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off here, but so I work with the city of Lansing in doing a smaller marijuana event or a cannabis event, and it was smaller because it was the first pebble, like we tossed out in the lake. The city wanted to know, well, how is this going to operate, and how is it going to is it going to go off with any hitches? And I think that now that first pebble was thrown, and we had an event that went off without a hitch. The city was involved. They allowed us permitting at their city park. I think that they're more open now, and they've seen what went wrong at that thing, and they were like, okay, it was in the summer. We need to make sure that people, if you're going to throw an event, that you offer free water to people. And now that they put that into their city permitting process. So I think that it's a process of you see what works and what doesn't, but you can also, and I think that you guys are doing a great job of it, look at other cities that have done successful events and model them.
All right, thank you. Carrie?
Yeah, I think it really depends again on the following of the event, such as like a High Times Cup that could be draw a lot of people versus there is a lot of first timers, where it's not going to be that amount of people and things like that. It's not going to be as prevalent and as amount of people and things like that. So it really depends on the person applying for the event license and the following that they draw.
Okay. You just mentioned cup. I know cannabis cup is a pretty common term in the industry, but a lot of people who are listening may not really understand what that is. Can you describe what a cannabis cup is?
So a cannabis cup is a competition where growers are allowed to enter their product and be judged. It is also a farmers market event where vendors can basically set up, have their POS terminal, and vend their product. If you want to submit, to be judged, you would submit your product. It would be judged, and then you could win what's called a cup or a second place or third place medal. My company has won 2 High Times Cannabis Cups, one in 2017 for flower, one in 2018 for concentrates, non-solvent. We have 2 second place medals for infused pre-roll as well as cannabis concentrate, and a third place follow-up for a flower that we did. So it's just a lot of it's an award show. It's how we recognize each other within the industry.
Great. That's a great explanation. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Neil, did you have any additional response?
You know, I think that even High Times is having a tough time finding their new place where they're going to hold licensed events, you know, because this is a new avenue for the entire state, not just them. So, you know, I think that ideally they would love to have it in Detroit or something like that, but you know, Detroit is late to the ball game as far as adopting an ordinance for adult use and things like that. So, you know, it made it prohibitive for them to find a location because those permitting processes weren't even in place for Detroit. So I think that, you know, once these permitting processes are more localized and streamlined, you know, we'll see a lot more of these events and things like that, hopefully. So
Great. All right. Well, once again, on behalf of the city of Farmington Hills, I want to thank you for your time. You've been very informative, excellent information, and I'm sure the city council will appreciate. Once again, if you have additional information you want to submit, the email address is fhclerk@fhgov.com. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
thank you for their time.